Are we forbidden to judge anyone about anything? Judge not, that ye be not judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured to you again. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Matthew 7:1-3. These verses, often quoted but seldom fully understood, have become something of a shield for those seeking to escape criticism. They are wielded as though Jesus' words serve as a divine gag order, forbidding anyone from ever pointing out wrongdoing. But does this really mean that we are forbidden to judge anything or anyone? Or is Jesus addressing something deeper? Let's begin with a bit of context. Have you ever noticed how some people, even those who seem to know very little of the Bible, are quick to quote this verse, "Judge not, that ye be not judged"? It's as if it's the universal defense mechanism for avoiding accountability. As one writer humorously pointed out, the one passage that every sinner seems to know is Matthew 7:1. But here's the catch. Those who quote this verse often stop after the first two words, "Judge not." It's almost as though they've put a period where Jesus hasn't. So let's take a closer look at what Jesus is really saying here. Is he truly forbidding all forms of judgment? Or is there something more going on? To understand this, imagine you're at a construction site and someone points out a speck of dust in your eye. All the while, you're standing there with a 2x4 sticking out of yours. It's a ridiculous image, but that's precisely what Jesus wants us to see. This is the picture he paints in Matthew 7:3-4. The issue isn't judgment itself, it's hypocrisy. Jesus warns against the kind of judgment where we are quick to condemn others while ignoring our own glaring faults. It's like trying to help someone clean up their yard when your own backyard is filled with garbage. You wouldn't take advice from someone with a messier yard than yours, right? Jesus isn't saying to stop helping others altogether. He's saying, clean up your own mess first. That way, you can help others with a clear conscience. This principle is reinforced in verse 5. Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. It's not about never judging. It's about judging rightly, with humility, self-awareness, and love. Once we've dealt with our own sins, we are then equipped to help others with theirs. Now let's consider Paul's teaching in Romans chapter 2, verses 1-3. He calls out the hypocrisy of those who judge others for the same sins they commit themselves. It's the classic case of do as I say, not as I do, which never sits well with anyone. Imagine a thief telling someone not to steal. That's the kind of hypocrisy Paul warns about. But the Bible doesn't leave us in the dark on this issue. In fact, judgment, when done correctly, is an essential part of the Christian life. Take Galatians 6 verse 1, for example, where Paul encourages those who are spiritual to restore someone caught in sin. But there's a warning. We must look to ourselves so that we don't fall into the same temptation. It's a call for careful, compassionate correction, not reckless condemnation. And here's another fascinating point. Just a few verses after Jesus says, "Judge not," he tells us in Matthew 7 verse 6, "Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine." Now, unless he's referring to actual dogs and pigs, which, spoiler alert, he's not, this verse requires some form of judgment. Jesus is telling us to discern, to judge who will treat the gospel with respect and who will trample it underfoot. Then, later in the same chapter, Jesus warns us about false prophets, describing them as wolves in sheep's clothing. Again, we're instructed to judge their fruits, their actions and teachings, so we can avoid being led astray. So, clearly, not all judgment is forbidden. In fact, Jesus calls for it when it's done properly and with righteous intentions. What does righteous judgment look like? John 7 verse 24 gives us the answer. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Righteous judgment isn't about superficial judgments or snap decisions based on how things appear. It's about discerning right from wrong based on God's word. Let's not forget Revelation 2, verse 2, where Jesus commends the church at Ephesus for testing and exposing false apostles. This requires judgment, yet Jesus praises them for it. Or think about Paul, who rebuked Peter to his face in Galatians 2, verses 11 to 14, when Peter was leading others astray by his hypocrisy. Paul judged Peter's actions to be wrong and acted accordingly, and rightly so. The truth is, we are called to make judgments. We're called to discern right from wrong, to uphold truth, and yes, even to rebuke sin when necessary. However, we must always start with ourselves. Before we can address the sins of others, we must first examine our own hearts, remove the beam from our eyes, and seek God's wisdom. As 2 Timothy 4 verse 2 tells us, we are to preach the word, be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long-suffering and doctrine. This requires a form of judgment that is rooted in love and humility, not in self-righteousness or hypocrisy. At the end of the day, it's not about avoiding all judgment. It's about making the right kind of judgment. We must judge righteously, according to God's standard, not our own. In conclusion, those who twist Jesus' words to avoid accountability may try to shield themselves with Matthew 7, verse 1, but the full context reveals the deeper truth. We are to judge, but only after we've judged ourselves first. And ultimately, all of us will stand before the judgment seat of God. Let's make sure we're living according to His word to be ready on that day. So let us judge with righteous judgment, holding fast to the truth and lovingly guiding others toward it.